ambapo mwenzangu Jesse Rogers yuko pale kufuatilia kile ambacho kinajiri. Maanake leo ni siku katika siku tatu za taifa kuomboleza wanafunzi 21 walioangamia baada ya kuhusika kwenye mkasa wa moto katika shule ya msingi ya Hillside Endarasha Academy mnamo siku ya Alhamisi. Zimeanza rasmi hii leo. Shughuli ya uchunguzi wa vinasaba DNA inatarajiwa kuanza katika chumba cha kuhifadhia maiti cha hospitali ya Mory level 4. Mwanahabari wetu Jesse Rogers yuko ange ili kutufahamisha ni kipi kinajiri, na sasa tunaungana naye moja kwa moja kutoka katika hospitali hiyo ya Mory. Jesse Rogers, tufahamishe kipi kimezungumzwa hadi kufikia sasa.
Mory, there's very little progress in terms of the flow of information from the last time we talked. When we gave you the link a little bit earlier, we were at Mory level 4 hospital, but right behind me here, this is where the newly built mortuary is, the Mory level 4 hospital mortuary. And as you can see, the wall is definitely fresh. We tried to go inside a little bit earlier on, but as you can see, the gates are locked, restricted access to the mortuary. But we can definitely see parents flocking in their numbers. Those who want a semblance of closure in terms of getting to know the state of affairs in regards to their children. Remember, the official records by the government indicate that 21 deaths have been recorded so far. 19 occurred during that inferno at the Said dormitory at Hillside Endarasha Academy. 2 more deaths occurred in hospital. But what we've been able to receive from the parents, most of them are contesting the figures given by the government. Remember, on Friday, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua mentioned that up to 70 were unaccounted for. On Saturday, the government spokesperson Isaac Mory mentioned that roughly 19 people were unaccounted for. So that number, according to the government spokesperson, went down. But according to the parents here, we were actually on the receiving end as members of the Fourth Estate, because they were blaming us for reporting some numbers which they do not agree with. But of course, at the end of the day, we have to report the official figures given by the government, and that's what we'll try to stick to. But even as we do that, we'll try and listen to the parents and what exactly they're saying. Most of them were quite emotional. A little bit earlier on, we were inside the mortuary. We happened to gain access, and some of the parents were actually putting the local administrative officers, the chiefs and whatnot, on the spot, mentioning that 70 is the number that was said by the government. They were against the fact that some of the students had actually escaped from the school during the confusion on the Thursday night inferno. And what they were simply saying is that that number can actually go high. So we'll be waiting here, camping as always, to bring you up to speed with the latest developments happening right here at Mory level 4 hospital mortuary. Let me give you a semblance of the process. Once the parents come here, earlier on we were able to talk to the Directorate of Child Services, and they said the first stop is the psychosocial support, the counseling. That's the first stop for the parents. Thereafter, they will make their way to the mortuary right behind me, where the DNA analysis will start. Of course, they'll try and get samples of blood or whatnot in order to match the parents with some of the bodies that were actually taken from the mortuary, bearing in mind some of them are unidentifiable due to the extent of the fire that was at the dormitory. So that's the latest we have here. The parents are actually contesting in terms of the official results given by the government. They say that is not true. But of course, we'll definitely try go with the official figures so as not to cause speculation and whatnot. What we know so far, according to the official figures, 19 unaccounted for. 21 deaths so far, 19 occurring within that said dormitory where most of the bodies were burnt beyond recognition. And that's why this scientific process is quite important in order to match the bodies with the family so that they can get a semblance of closure. So that's one thing that stood out. Equally, as we're interacting with the parents right here, because it's not just the parents who came, other guardians, relatives equally accompanied the parents, because it's an emotional time. When we talk to them, we understand that only 2 people at most are allowed within the mortuary. The other family members are asked to stay outside as they conduct the DNA analysis. According to them, they want the figures released. They want a semblance of closure, and that's why they're criticizing the snail-paced progress of the flow of information. But from the government side, you sort of understand, because they have to be sure once they're releasing the results. And that's why we're here as members of the Fourth Estate to echo what's said by the government, even as we put our ear to the ground and listen to what the parents are saying, air their plight, air some of the reservations they have, and that's why we're exactly here. So a little bit later on, we'll be expecting a presser from some of the DCI officers, the forensic and the homicide investigators who are already within the mortuary right behind me. They'll give us an update on the process so far, because we don't know as of now how many parents have been able to give the DNA analysis, which is currently ongoing, by the way. As I mentioned, they first start with counseling, and then thereafter they make their way to the forensic investigators, who will be getting samples of their blood in order to match the DNA, whether it's carbon dated or forensic analysis. That's the latest from here, but we expect an update from the government authorities. Their presence is quite felt. A lot of vehicles, as you can see, Kenya Red Cross is equally present in order to give psychosocial support. We'll try and get the parents to speak on camera. Actually, we've tried, but as you understand, it's truly an emotional process. Most are reserved. They do not want to speak to camera due to that element of not getting closure at all. But this is the latest. As you can see, some tables, a lot of activity happening right outside the gates of the mortuary right there. And most of those who are standing outside, those without the reflector jackets, are actually parents who are waiting with bated breath to get the way forward in terms of information. They've already made their way to Narumoru Hospital. Remember yesterday I mentioned, Yeri, that buses had actually been organized by the local leadership to ferry parents. That's what was said during the interdenominational service. But according to the few parents and the guardians we've been able to interact with, they brought themselves. They made their way right here personally to Narumoru Level 4 Hospital, which is not just a stone's throw away distance from Nyeri. It's actually quite a distance, 30 or 40-minute drive. So that's the latest at Narumoru Hospital. We're still trying to gather more information in regard to the DNA analysis, which, mind you, coincides with the first day of the 3 days of national mourning, where flags, the Kenyan flag and the East African flag, will be flying at half-mast. We're still trying to source for more information from the government. They haven't informed us about the costs of the inferno that claimed the lives of 21 learners so far. That's one of the questions we'll be following up on and pressing the government. Equally, we've gathered a lot of reports from parents, guardians, especially those who were able to save their young ones once the inferno started. Most parents made their way to the institution, and those who were able to pick their young ones mentioned that a couple of issues stood out for them. Number one, in terms of the access, the gates to the dormitory. Remember, according to the safety guidelines, you definitely have to have a number of doors, up to 3, including the emergency door opened. According to some of the parents, the emergency door was locked from the outside. Equally, what stood out is the wooden structure. That particular structure, the dormitory, wasn't made out of concrete fully. There was an extension of some sort, and that's what we'll be trying to find out right here. Remember, it's still emotional because the parents who have come here want a semblance of closure. There are those who have been affected, those who haven't been able to find their children ever since the Thursday night inferno. Suleiman Yeri.
Chanzo cha moto huu ilikuwa ni nini? Je, ilikuwa ni hitilafu ambazo zingeweza kuepukika ama ilikuwa vipi? Ni bado ni maswali ambayo wazazi wanajiuliza, wakiitaka serikali kuweza kubainisha, wengine wakilalamika kwamba bado hawajaweza kuwapata watoto wao, wakidai kwamba idadi ambayo inatangazwa sasa hivi huenda iko chini sana, kumbe huenda bado kuna wengine. Lakini hadi kufikia sasa sisi tunachofahamu ni kwamba ni watu 21 ama wanafunzi 21 ambao wameangamia kutokana na mkasa huo wa Endarasha, Hillside na Mory kule ambako haya yamekuwa yakiendelea. Kufikia hapo mimi sina la ziada ila kutamatisha taarifa hizi za yanayojiri kufikia hapa. Mimi niseme kwa heri, ubaki na wingi wa heri. Mimi ni Suleiman Yeri, uwe na